There's enough uncertainty to go around right now. NetSuite
This
reduces
is
it
the
by giving
Truth
you
Frequency Radio Network. We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. Your hosts are Patrick and Kathryn Andries.
Join us each week as we explore a wide range of metaphysical topics such as dreams, astrology, intuitive readings, and life purpose. You'll receive practical guidance so that you can live your most awesome life.
Learn more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com and connect with us on Facebook at Spirit's Journey Radio. Welcome to Spirit's Journey. We are coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio, being simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. You can also find us on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live, among others. We are here in the Heartland, holding the energy for spiritual truth and awareness. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Kathryn. Welcome, everyone. We have an amazing guest today, and so I hope if you're tuning in, you're in for a treat. We have Sharron Rose today. Now, she's the director and producer of the forthcoming documentary series, Quantum Qi, the Taoist art of nurturing life. This is an expansive and groundbreaking series which features numerous well-known Qigong and Tai Chi masters, teachers, and scholars. And for the second year in a row, she is also the producer and host of the Qigong Global Summit, which is on the Shift Network. Now, this is a true Renaissance women, people. Sharron is a filmmaker, choreographer, composer, author, teacher, and healer. She's spent the last 40 years working in the fields of education, performing arts, healing arts, and filmmaking to investigate, integrate, and impart the knowledge and wisdom of ancient and traditional cultures throughout the world. 20 years ago, she co-founded Sacred Mysteries Productions, for which she's produced numerous documentary films and received grants and honors and awards honoring her work in the arts. You can find out more there about Sacred Mysteries at Gaia.com. She's trained since childhood in the classical Western arts of ballet, opera, and theater, and she was the recipient of a Fulbright Scholar Research Fellowship to conduct extensive research into the art, culture, and spiritual traditions of North India. And she actually became the first American disciple of renowned classical Indian dancer and early Bollywood star Sitara Devi. And she was initiated into a sacred tradition of the ancient feminine yogic arts. She is the author of the award-winning book, The Path of the Priestess, a guidebook for awakening the divine feminine. Welcome, Sharron.
Hi, Sharron.
It's such a pleasure to be with you both today.
Well, you have such an amazing, extensive list of credentials behind you. I don't even know where to begin. But let's start it off by talking about how you've been, as a woman, you've been intimately involved in the creation of works of art that have been inspiring for people. So speak to us about your personal experience in the performing and healing arts, and how that can help us find new levels, especially in this time, for healing, sensitivity, and expanding our awareness.
Well, my journey into these realms actually began very young. My mother, who had gone to college at 14 years old and was a tap dancer also, threw me into dance. I was a very emotional child, very expressive. And she put me in the arts as a way to channel all that energy. And I'm really grateful for that. And all her years of sitting with me and making sure I did my papers on time and helping me write them and et cetera. I was very blessed in that way. And, early on, I was in theater. And one of our assignments was to go out to the mall and look at people and see how they move and see how they hold their bodies and look at the expressions on their faces to use as actors. And I think that that's where my whole interest and work in the healing arts began. Because at that point, it really began to show me that there's so much more to us than just the physical body, that we have emotions And those emotions affect our physical body, and our thoughts affect our emotions, and that affects our physical body. So there were years and years, as you read, in the performing arts. I started video production in '78 and integrated video into live. I wrote some musicals, and at that point we were really into performance art. So even then, the psychology was in my productions. I remember had one where I had someone playing Carl Jung and debating Freud and things like that. So I was always really interested in the emotional, psychological aspects of being. And then in India, which was one of the most extraordinary, life-changing experiences in my life, to live with a really legendary dancer. Not only that, but she was what you would call a yogini, very deep into the spiritual aspects, Sitara Devi, of the Hindu and Vedic traditions, and even what was very interesting, because this is North Indian dance, music like, and I became friends with people like Ravi Shankar, Ali Akbar Khan, and some of the great North Indian musicians of India. So it was an incredible immersion into a world that, as an American Jewish girl growing up in Baltimore and being a ballet dancer, it was just life-changing. And I was trained in how to embody all of the myths and stories of India, and not only of the Vedic and Hindu traditions, but the Sufi traditions, which had mixed in with the North Indian Hindu dance form when the Mughals from Persia came in to India. And so it was just such an incredible immersion into a culture which had really integrated so many influences from all over the world. And I had spent a lot of time as a dancer and a musician in New York. So I went there at a time when all these different cultures were coming in. So I had a partner from Haiti. I had a dance partner from India, of course, one for a long time from Lebanon. And so I was able to just immerse myself and actually embody, so feel what it was like, if I'm a Haitian dancer or I'm, doing Middle Eastern. And then I started reconstructing the music, dance, and ritual from the temples of Egypt, because all along it's not only been the dance, music, theater, and film, but it's been the understanding of all of these spiritual and healing traditions from these different cultures. And then I went deeper. In the 90s, I studied craniosacral therapy and the psychophysical method of neurosensory reeducation. And so those really helped me to go deeper and deeper into these relationships between the physical body, the emotional body, and the mental body, and of course, the spirit. And that is under all that work in helping people to understand that they are so much more than this physical body. I mean, it's all interconnected, and the physical body is our temple, really. But to help them understand that they can move beyond all the negative, imprinted, programmed, you're not good enough, you were born in sin, all that kind of stuff. How to free yourselves and find your essential, or some people would call it authentic, glowing, vibrant, intuitive self.
That is fantastic. So it must be sad for you to see how the budgets in schools, when they usually cut the performing arts.
Oh, it's very sad, because my dance partner, Ramzi El Adlibi, who was from Lebanon, well, New York, but he had originally come from Lebanon, extraordinary dancer and teacher. We worked in the schools in New York, New Jersey, Virginia, and Connecticut for about 6 years in the 90s. And we danced and taught about 12 cultures in 45 minutes, including bringing the children up and putting quickly costumes on them and having them, dance Africa or Hawaii or all of that. And we were also did a lot of workshops that would last a whole semester where we would bring the beauty of these different cultures into the school, and the parents would get involved and they'd make the costume. It was great. It was really fun. So we were during the 90s, the arts were really, these kind of programs were really helping. And now we don't even know what's going to happen next.
Right. Well, you are quite a talented dancer, and you even received the Fulbright Senior Research. And so how did you get from that journey and this Indian tradition, the traditions that you have spoken about? What is your journey into the world of Qigong? Because that's a major part of your life now, the traditional Chinese medicine, and then eventually also to this amazing movie that I've looked at the trailers for. It just looks amazing, the Quantum Chi series.
Thank you. Well, in 2000, when my husband, Jay Widener, and I began Sacred Mysteries, our focus was to assist people in understanding that their energy body. Let's go to this. These days, climate change is a huge, huge topic for everyone. And we're all talking about the outer world. But what about the inner world? What about energetic climate change? And I would say that that's what we've been working to help, assist people to understand since 2000, the nature of their emotions, how to work with their emotions, how to transmute sadness and grief and, depression into courage. How to transmute anger into clarity. So we've been looking at that, and we started actually our company with documentaries with the great shaman healer Alberto Villoldo, and the great visionary artist Alex Gray, and sound healing with Jonathan Goldman. And I did a DVD called Yoga of Light, which was to help women understand and work with their emotions. So we've been making these films. We did some on one on death and the afterlife, and we were known for doing these 2012 movies, a series of that. And then we made our first feature film called The Last Avatar. Now, these films are all at the moment on Gaia. And it starred Neil Donald Walsh as the Count Saint Germain, and in that his character introduces the concept of the light body, that we have this body of light, and that includes the unseen forces like the thoughts and the emotions, etc., and of course like electricity, electromagnetism, and all of that. And I had been studying this for so many years and so many traditions that I thought, okay, I'm going to now make a serious documentary about this from many cultures. So I went to interview Master Mantak Chia, who's probably one of the lone Qigong masters in the world, because I knew that they really had these teachings. I'd been in many traditions, the Hindu, the Egyptian, and then the Tibetan Buddhist, etc. But I knew something about Taoism. So I went to interview him, and it was at a conference in Eastover Estate in Lenox, Massachusetts. And Ying, the owner, beautiful Chinese woman, said, you're here, and I have a conference of medical Qigong and Tai Chi going on. So just why don't you interview everybody? And so I did. And it was so powerful. It was all in nature. I had decided that everything I wanted to do was in nature because I really wanted to bring people, that sense of being, one with outer nature. And each one of these teachers stood for an hour or more and just transmitted. It was just getting a blast of knowledge and wisdom and light. And I was so impressed, not only with that, with what they were telling me in terms of everything I had studied, but also the flow and beauty and grace of the movements. But I would say the biggest aspect that just took me in was how this system, and it's simple, and it's been, it's Qigong is also connected with traditional Chinese medicine, so things like acupuncture, and feng shui and herbs, etc. And what I discovered was it has the teachings that assist you in taking your healing and your power back to self. So it gives you the tools to actually heal yourself on every level. And then once you can do that, then you're able to use that knowledge to help heal others. So that, I found that so profound. I started immediately doing the practice. And coming out of dance, the arms reminded me of classical ballet. So, and I had done a lot of yoga. So it also has a connection in many ways, some of the positions with yoga. But I actually found it to be more accessible for everyone. So if you're a child, Qigong is really cool because it's so connected with nature and animals. So you can teach kids to, like, they're doing Qigong, but they're thinking they're like a big bird flying in the sky. And yet they're playing with this Qi, this life force energy, and bringing it and spreading it through their body. And then if you're, 90 years old and you're lying in bed, you can still do Qigong. And so I found that to be just wonderful. And the deeper I went into it, and the more people I interviewed, it just became so clear that the potential it has, especially right now, which is very interesting, that we're really needing. If you look around, many of the people, a large percentage who are getting ill are people that are either, very elderly and, or people that have underlying conditions. And I feel the biggest thing that we need in the world is to teach people how to take their health in their own hands and how to heal themselves and how to let go of all the fear-based, horror, and you have no power and you have to give up your power. That needs to be shifted, and we really need to take our health into our own hands. And so I feel, and there's been many, many studies, Mayo Clinic and Dr. Roger Yanka, who is an associate producer, has worked with the Veterans Administration and with Kaiser Permanente. Another associate producer, Amalia Wai-Ching, has worked, she comes from this whole family of healers that worked with like kings and queens in Asia. And Dr. Epi Chow, she was on the Clinton a while ago, Alternative Health Council. The people involved in this are people who have been teaching this and working in these kinds of institutions for many, many years. So there's a lot of information and, science around how it can help you. And also, it's thousands of years old. Lately, I've been reading in some of the news, they're trying to say, because India is saying, well, their traditional medicine, Ayurveda, could help. They're not saying it will cure, but it will help you with your immune system. It's the same with traditional Chinese medicine. And some of these are saying, no, you can't trust this, you can't trust it. But, maybe it's not going to cure you of coronavirus, but, in your life, if you practice these, you're going to be healthier, you're going to be happier, and you're going to find, connection at a level you never have before.
Well, I'll say an amen to that for sure, because I think that's what's going on is hopefully this whole pandemic that's going on is a wake-up call for people to realize, your health has always been in your own hands. And of course, unfortunately, there's an establishment that wants us to think otherwise, that we're these fragile little beings, and the only way we can survive is if we give ourselves up to this medical system. And of course, that says basically that the power is not in our hands, that it's only through some magical cure out there. And I don't know what it's going to take for people to wake up to this. What's shocking to me is that now with the internet and, so many alternative healing clinics everywhere, that people are still scared and listening to the establishment. It's like, alternative medicine has been curing people right and left of different things because, as you said so well, it's the happiness, it's building up the immune system, it's the core that's going to protect you from anything. I mean, there's trillions of viruses out there. And so I'm so appreciative of the work you're doing by getting the word there to people who are living in this fear zone because they're buying into this idea that, there's something innately unhealthy about them. And, any virus
That's right.
could just kill them, which is completely ridiculous. So is there anything, you could offer people on the air as something that they could do, to experience the healing and self-empowerment qualities of Qigong or
Yes.
the life force? What is something they could do, apart from signing up for a class, I guess?
Well, I've been loving to give, because of what's going on, there's a practice called the 6 healing sounds. And I have found it the most efficacious practice for clearing the main organs of the body and also of clearing the emotions, because in the Taoist system, the traditional Chinese medicine, the organs are each one is connected with specific emotions. So let's do a little, because the lungs are very up this this time. So what you would do is, the first thing you do is clap your hands together and rub them. And you'll feel some heat, right? And then bring them apart and together. And you could start to feel, it's almost like slightly like taffy, pulling taffy, that there is this energy that is coming through, right? And then let's do this. Make sure your feet are flat on the ground, and then imagine that from the center of the earth, it's like your body is like a tree, and that you're shooting roots all the way down into the center of the earth. And from the center of the earth, this golden light, which represents health, wealth, and longevity, of course, joy, is rising up and coming into your feet, spreading through your feet, and then up through your ankles, and then up through your calves, and your knees, and your thighs, into your pelvis, and then up your spine, and flowing out from your spine into the organs of your body. So, your bladder and your stomach and intestines and spleen and pancreas and liver, and up into your heart and your lungs, and then all the way up through your throat and up into your head and filling your brain, and then opening. So it's like the top of your head. It's like the light spills around like a waterfall all around your body, and then imagine that light, like diamond, like sparkling light, is coming from the center of the galaxy, and just feeding that flower and coming down into your body, and filling your body with light from the heavens. And then from that place, focus upon your heart. The heart is, in traditional Chinese medicine, the heart is known as the emperor. It's the major organ. And of course, it's the center of love, unconditional love. And so feel that light coming both from the heaven and the earth, and then into your heart, and then have it spill down your arms, into your hands, and into your palms. So it feels like you have two little, almost like flashlight, shining out through the center of your palms. And then we're going to clap our hands together again and rub them, and put our hands on our lungs. And then, like, the lights are like your eyes, and you're looking into your lungs. And and you feel the warmth of your hands pervading your lungs. And we're going to take a deep breath in. And as you take the breath in, you feel it, the light spread through your lungs, and not only the front of your lungs, but the back of your lungs. People forget. So you want to get the front and the back. So we're going to breathe in, and we're going to feel that light spreading through our lungs. And then as we breathe out, we're going to imagine that all of our sadness and our grief and our depression is just being let go of. So we're going to breathe in and really send this healing light into your lungs. And as you breathe out, let that pain and suffering, just let it go. Let it go. And now we're going to do it again. We're going to put our hands again, rub our hands together and put them on our lungs. Now this time, we're going to look left and then right into our lungs. And we're going to see before us any situation in our lives where there is sadness and grief and depression. And we're just going to observe it. So let's do that. We're going to look 18 times. So we're going to go look and right and left and right and left and right.
All right, Sharron, I'm going to need to pause you there. So we're going to be going into our break. You are listening to Spirit's Journey on Truth Frequency Radio and One Is Talk Radio, and we will see you on the...
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back from the break. We are Spirit's Journey with Patrick and Kathryn Andries coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and Oneness Talk Radio. Today we are speaking with the amazing Sharron Rose, and we've been having a great conversation with her. So Sharron, thank you so much for that practice that you gave us there at the end of the first half. And so I can relate to how you could go from a dancer into Qigong and doing all these amazing metaphysical and healing activities that you've been getting into, because I've been a practitioner and teacher of Tai Chi, and a lot of times I think of that as a moving meditation. And then as I've been expanding out into this field, I've been hearing more people referring to it like that as well. Can you relate to that kinesthetic movement of dance, even in your early days? I know you mentioned a lot of interest in psychology, and I found a lot of people who are interested in psychology later develop a real interest in self-awareness and self-development and spiritual practices. Can you relate to that early time when you were dancing and as you were growing up? Can you see those early seeds being planted that led to all of these amazing healing and metaphysical practices that you've been exploring since then?
Oh, of course. That's the great blessing of my life. I mean, I've always been, my mom, I thanked her recently. She's about to be 93. And I said, Mom, I just really want to thank you. And she goes, no, it was all you. I mean, I just had this, I came in with this, nature of looking for the beauty of life and also the truth. I've really, my husband in particular, since we've been together, he really is a explorer going deep into, the truth. And where do you find it? You find it through your own experience, unless I talk to someone who has experienced something. I can't say that I really believe what, the mainstream media is throwing at us. Um, when I hear about people now, nobody that I know personally has yet experienced, really the virus, but now it's like, my brother's daughter's friends, right? So I really have always tried, and we have tried to do our best to bring out um, the truth. And, how do you really know if something's true unless you experience it with your own body and your own eyes and your own kinesthetic awareness? So that's been part of the whole quest. And I also feel that there's been such, we can start back. There was a man in the, I think, 20s, the cousin of Freud, named Edward Bernays, and he's known as like the man that started advertising. And he thought of these very surreptitious ways to like he decided for this advertising of this form of cigarettes to get women to smoke. He had them equate it with freedom. So, smoking was like women's liberation. And so there has been, since that time, and he's kind of like the Bible of advertising so since that time, there's really been this movement towards, commercialism. And it's more important to, have women smoke cigarettes and actually think about their health and their well-being. So I've been looking at a lot of this for so many years and looking for the ways in which we can free ourselves and really rediscover our authentic being, our essence that has always been there, pure, clear from the beginning of time. And how do we discover that true inner nature? And one of the ways is through working with the emotions. So many of, everybody practically experiences trauma as children. You come in all like fresh and like open, and then things happen. And too often, those early wounds become kind of the map of your life. And rather than finding ways, looking out to find ways to heal that, you're actually, you build, when the wound comes, then you build that kind of like a wall around it, and a wall around you, and it makes you afraid. And so rather than really looking for ways to work with that because it's scary, it can be what we call the shadow side of things. We tend to keep repeating and saying, oh yeah, well, I was wounded, so it's going to keep happening. But these teachings, particularly the Qigong, Tai Chi, traditional Chinese medicine, really give us ways to free ourselves from those traumas and to understand the world from a completely different perspective.
It's interesting that you were talking about the psychology of advertising, because when I was in college, I took a public speaking class, and he went into great detail about all the logical fallacies to avoid when you are speaking. But he also said that the advertising industry intentionally uses each one of those logical fallacies, things like hiring a celebrity to do an advertisement on some kind of medication, because you associate the celebrity as being an authority, even though they have no idea what this medication does. And that's just one out of, I think, like 12 of them that he went through. So it is almost like, as humanity as a whole, we almost need to be deprogrammed cult of consumerism that the advertising industry has built up. It's amazing. And so also related to, what everybody's experiencing and trying to see through all of the different information that's coming at us, and a lot of it being filtered through the media, and, everything is mainstreamed now, so that the alternative health and alternative ideas are even just blatantly being censored sometimes. It's amazing. But you wrote a really great article here, Reflections Upon the Global Pandemic. And if anybody wants to read that more thoroughly, it's on the Shift Network. Could you give us just a brief synopsis of your thoughts on this pandemic and what we're all experiencing right now, how this is happening?
Well, in many ways, I'm noticing that even people who are, have been, we could say, really programmed, or say like drank the Kool-Aid, who are really part of that. If you listen to mainstream, there's like a talking point of the day, and it's always fear-based, like, the same words. It's just this whole psychological thing. Going back to Edward Bernays, actually, his book was like a reading for the Nazis. But also, it became like the Bible, for advertising. And so I actually feel, that all of this information's coming at us because of the internet. But, and there's all these talking points of the day, and there's this, and they're really, really repressing what would make people happy. I mean, wouldn't talking about how to help yourself and that we should be, first of all, why are they keeping people locked up in their houses? Fresh air, sunlight really helps your immune system. It just lifts up your spirit, number one. And that I don't understand. We people can go outside with social distancing. Why aren't they? We can here in Colorado. So I don't understand. It almost makes me feel like they just want to repress and repress and repress. And what's happening with that is that many of you people, you'd call them your average person, is starting to question, well, what is going on? And I feel that this time, because I like to look at every challenge as an opportunity for growth. So this time right now, I would say, limit your watching of the mainstream news and go in and do what brings you joy. Think about your inner child and what made you happy as a child, and nurture that inner child. And there's so much. What the beauty of what's going on is that I know in the Qigong world, so many teachers. I have a Facebook group for Qigong, and I have teachers. I must have 3 teachers a day just sending me exercises free. To put up. Today is World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, and there's this whole event going on worldwide, free, with all these amazing teachers. And it's not just in the Qigong world. There's yoga classes, there's meditations. I mean, that's the beauty of what's going on. But, how long are people going to be able to stay in this locked in situation? We want to use the time as much as possible to really go deep and find out who we are and question where we've been and where we can go. I mean, as I talked about earlier with this climate change, I feel that if people could really start to understand the nature of their emotions and learn how to center themselves, ground themselves, and really see from a whole new place of love and healing, and generosity and kindness, then everything would change. It wouldn't only be our relationships with others. Because, when you are angry and you're, spilling out your anger with at someone, it's really not only affecting them, emotionally, but it's affecting their physical body, their organs, the wounds I talked about earlier. What they do is, so if you, I worked with a lot of women that had fibromyalgia, and every one of them had a very powerful father that they were trying to live up to his expectations. and they became oversensitive. And every one of them around, in their solar plexus under their heart, that's where they felt like they could never be good enough. And so what happened was they would try to protect that part. So their shoulders would round, and instead of holding their chest open and their head high, it would kind of be like they'd be kind of going in, trying to protect their heart and that part of themselves. And instead of like looking directly, they'd be looking down. So you could, from that, I'm just trying to give an example of how, emotions could affect you throughout your life. And so what we're doing is finding now all of these practices that help you release that and help you, lift your head, find your true essence and the joy that was there from early on, the things that brought you just, friendship and communication and communion with people and fun. Why aren't we in the media bringing those things out? Oh, here are these, mainstream. Here's some wonderful things you can do to find joy. Why? No, you're just supposed to sit there and be in fear and watch fear and fear. And so I'm happy that.
Do you have an exercise that you could do for us today for discovering, releasing, and transmuting this emotional trauma that a lot of us have?
Well, we could go back to finish the lungs, which is cool.
Oh,
so,
sure.
Let's do that, because that's up now. The lungs hold the sadness and the fear and the depression. So we'll rub our hands together again and put them on our lungs. Now this time we're going to look into the left lung, and then the right lung, and the left lung, and the right lung, and keep doing that. And as you do that, imagine in front of you any situation where you hold depression. Like, what situation causes you to be depressed? Now, we could just say this situation we're going through right now. But beyond that, any situation in your life where you really feel sad, you're looking into your lungs, see that in front of you, and then do what you can to extract the emotion from the situation. So you just see, for example, if there's someone who's causing you a lot of sadness, instead of, seeing how it's hurting you, try to look from your spirit and see that person is really suffering. And it's their problem. It's not yours. And then we're going to raise our hands above our heads, clasp your fingers together and raise your hands above your head. And take a deep breath in. We're going to do the sound S. And as we do the sound S, we imagine that from our lungs up through our arms, like all of the sadness and depression is leaving us in the form of like smoke, and it's going around our body and then into the earth. So let's do that. So put your hands together and raise them above your head. Take a deep breath. And let it go. Just let all of that sadness, all of that depression, all of that suffering just go into the ground. Really, really let it go from your physical body, your emotions. Just see it going into the ground. And what's interesting is that the earth itself needs our emotions to it's like compost. Releasing our emotions into the earth like that is a positive, because the earth transmutes it. And then as you really, really, really let it go down, Let it all go, all of that pain, all of that sadness. And then from the center of the earth, it's all transmuted into golden healing light that comes up again through your feet and your ankles and your calves, your knees, your thighs, into your pelvis, up your spine, and have it come now into your lungs. And feel your lungs start to glow with this vibrant white light. The lungs, the light of the transmutational light of the lungs is white. And feel also your heart opening and filling your lungs with this light of healing. And then feel that white light from your lungs spread, making this field of protection all around your lungs and your physical body. So that's one of the simple version of the exercise for the lungs. There's also in this tradition ones for the kidneys, which store fear, and the liver, which stores anger, and the heart, which is frustration and hate, and the stomach, spleen, pancreas, which holds anxiety. And I've been doing these practices for a while now, and it's just very interesting how, for example, the lungs, once you start to free the emotion, you develop a kind of courage to speak, courage to, speak your truth, as we're talking about, and courage to move beyond these imprints. And so these are from the Taoist tradition. If people are interested, you can find teachings on it on the internet. Just type in 6 healing sounds, and there are many teachings from Mantak Chia especially. He has a lot of videos on it, but other teachers. And it's very helpful. I've noticed that, it also gives you a kind of sense of seeing a situation with a sense of detachment. So because I know personally, being very emotional, that, emotions have this way of building in your mind, and they can get, it's like the nature of your mind essentially is like a clear, cloudless sky, completely no clouds. And then the emotions come and they start building up like clouds. And sometimes they can be tornadoes even. And so these teachings help you to release that and really find your center, find that very still, wonderful place in you. And we discussed earlier this whole thing about moving meditation in Qigong. And there's, a phrase in Qigong called stillness in movement, movement in stillness. And in the teaching itself, it's like you, as you're moving, and it's these beautiful, soft, fluid movements of gathering qi into your centers and into your organs and throughout your body, from nature and the world. And so by doing this, you're moving, but yet there's what happens is that you're focused. Like, we'll go back to dance, as a dancer, I really learned how to focus my mind, because if I didn't, focus on the movement, I might just forget it. So, it really focuses your mind. So there becomes when you're doing this movement, because your mind is now in your body. So many of us are kind of not in our bodies, but in these practices, your mind goes into your body and the movement, and the mind becomes much calmer. Then, in the meditation, there still is, you'll start to recognize, yes, you're going, in many traditions, there's, the sense of going into that you want to go into emptiness, where there's no thoughts. But in the traditions I've studied, that isn't really the key. The key is to recognize. So you're seeing your mind as this cloudless sky, and then these thoughts start to rise up, and rather than follow them, especially if they're negative, then you just notice them and let them go. So there is movement of the thoughts. It's a natural thing in the stillness of the meditation.
Wow, that's very powerful. So it's interesting that you mentioned that the lungs hold depression and sadness. I did a little bit of research on this illness that's going around with people, and we do something called an intuitive health reading. And so through that, we can identify the mental and emotional components of what's going on, as well as physically what's going on. And so I checked a book. There's a book called Permanent Healing that's based on years of research with these intuitive health readings. And so a lot of people, when they're having trouble with this, it's in the lungs. It seems like it hits first. And so that's actually related to people feeling like they can't fulfill their desires, possibly blaming others for this. Also feeling a loss of freedom and expression, which is interesting because that's specifically something that you mentioned, as well as fearing that their desires will not be fulfilled. And then also we've been finding that in the research that we're doing on this, there seems to be a component of this related to the blood. And so the blood isn't carrying the oxygen properly, which is why people get short of breath. And so that's actually an attitude of not being able to respond to your life and learning and imagining yourself as being incapable. And so it's interesting, some of the parallels there, and also that this is, something that is kind of affecting the planet. This is like one of the first planetary things that we've experienced since the Second World War. That's probably the last time that the entire planet was kind of embroiled in, something together as a group consciousness. So it's really interesting. I do have a lot of hope that we can have some very positive outcomes. But I think, like you said, I agree that we do need to wake up. We do need to be able to really look within, quiet our minds to see the truth. So, Sharron, we're coming down toward the end here. Can you let our listeners know one more time how they can find you, especially anything about your movie, Quantum Chi?
Yes. Oh, well, one thing I do want to mention is that all these things I've been talking about are part of this series. And so I'm using animation in a way to actually show the unseen. So when I'm talking about the emotion of anger, we should have people do it, expressing it, and then you see what happens to their energy field, or someone yelling at someone else. You actually see how the particles of energy are like being taken into the angry person and out of the other person. But anyway, if you want to see some beautiful trailers, you can go to quantumchimovie.com. I have an active Facebook page, facebook.com/quantumchi, and it's QUANTUMQI. I also have that group I mentioned. That's facebook.com/groups/quantumchi life force energy.
All right. Well, Sharron, it's been amazing having you on with us, and I'm sure we'd love to have you on again if you'd be willing down the road.
Oh, I'd love to.
Awesome. Well, you are listening to Spirit's Journey on Truth Frequency Radio and Oneness Talk Radio. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kathryn. Have a healing week, everybody.